twice about purple, so it was great that this is a purple day for me too. It's always a purple day for me. Charles Fillmore, the Unity co-founder with his wife Myrtle Fillmore, spoke about Advent on a radio broadcast in 1923 called Christ Mine, the Second Coming of Christ. He shared his thoughts on his understanding that Christ is an idea in divine mind, and highlighted the universality of the Christ, the divine essence that dwells in every human being. I really love the expansive concept that the Christ idea is not a birth, but an awakening. Not an experience that happened centuries ago that we commemorate and witness as an ancient story or folklore, but an experience of our own that we embody every day. I think of the Advent season as a time we lay the groundwork for and embark on a journey celebrating the reopening, recommitting to our divine dimension. Christmas. There is an anticipation for us on this adventure of the Christ Mass. Mass meaning, in Greek, meaning a gathering, a preparation for our own awakening to that Christ consciousness, the Christmas. The word adventure, which is a word I love, it's defined as an unusual and a stirring experience. It comes from the Latin root word, the same Latin root word that Advent comes from, adventus, which translates as coming. The Unity booklet, The Promise of Christmas Advent, in 1994, said that the vast and uncharted frontier for the Advent experience is that which exists within the Christmas, the Christ Mass. To search for the Advent, the coming of the Christ, means to embark on an adventure of spiritual introspection. Today, I'm offering that what we discover in this process is peace. Peace is a path that lights our way. Instead of building a road to somewhere other than where we are, the pathway of spirit, of peace, requires us to follow paths and open doors that are within us. The journey goes within, opening into the life we already have. That's the awakening. Really, it's the reawakening. Now, by peace, I'm not referring to having no conflicts or no challenges or a carefree, easygoing existence. That dualistic way of thinking, which is somewhat of a delusion, is way too limiting. It really can't contain the vast intricacies and intersections of the life that we express and the life that we live. Believing that I am black, or I'm white, or Chinese, or rich, or poor, or gay, or straight, or fat, or thin is an illusion. Yes, I agree, those identities can often help us to explain so much of how we are, where we are, and even at times why we are. Identities can temporarily help comfort us to cope with life on so many different levels, but can't offer the sustenance we crave and need to fulfill our own being. Illusion will never satisfy us. Only the truth of who we are, if realized, has the power to set us free. And by setting us free, fulfilling our being. That's our freedom. The ultimate truth of who we are is not I am this or I am that, but I am. This is the peace that the Apostle Paul describes in Philippians 4:7 as surpassing all understanding, as we heard in the lighting of the Advent candle. Peace isn't to be so much understood as it is to be experienced. It is the path of non-resistance. Opening our minds, opening our hearts to all there is without judgment, without expectation. Advent prepares us to give way to this sacred sense of presence, a deepening peace and serenity, a complete freedom from fear. The peace that we desire and need in the world cannot come by treaties or agreements or by wars or boundary lines. Peace can only come when we become receptive to it and become peacemakers, expressing peace from within. Tune in and align yourself with the vibration of peace, the positive life force, ever-flowing substance of the universe. As we grow deeper in this presence, we discover God doesn't have substance, but God is substance. And peace is not found in God, but God is peace. When Jesus reminded us that the kingdom of God is within, he was saying that everything we might need in life exists as a potentiality within us now. So the peace is already there. The understanding, the awakening, the coming is according to the expanse of our consciousness, opening to the truth. The path we are on towards this kingdom and the kingdom itself is the light of peace. It is all one, the path and the destination. And we who are on the path, we're all one. What we seek and who we are one and the same. Our being is both the seed of peace and the manifesting light of peace. I can't remember if I've ever told this story in one of my lessons or not. I don't think I have, so I wrote it down. I believe this story has its own message of peace. Now, I think this was either the late 80s or maybe early 1990s. I don't recall exactly. I had attended an opera production at the Metropolitan Opera at Lincoln Center in New York City. And I had stayed late to chat with some of the singers who I knew. It was probably close to midnight when I was leaving. I came out of the side of the building, the stage door entrance, and began to walk towards the subway. Now, having lived in New York City for quite a long time, I knew the necessity of taking off my rings, my cufflinks, my necklace, and all the jewelry before I got to the subway. And so I was doing that while I was walking, And then seemingly coming out of nowhere, a group of young guys were upon me. They were probably late teen, 18, 19, 20, in that age group. And two of them grabbed my two arms, and the others surrounded me and walked me from Lincoln Center 2 blocks into Central Park, all the time telling me not to say anything or they would kill me right there. Never really being the kind of kid that liked to follow directions somebody was giving me, I immediately started a conversation with them. I don't remember exactly what I was saying. I probably said, oh, the weather is nice out tonight, or it's too late to be going into Central Park, or I don't know, something, or I just saw a beautiful opera. Something like that, I don't know, I was just rambling. I said whatever, came to my mind at the time to sort of take my mind off the fear. When we got to the edge of the park, one of the guys took his knife out and put it against my side and marched me into the dark center of the park. I remember thinking to myself, I could probably outrun them because after all, I'm a ballet dancer and we move pretty fast, or so I thought anyway. I also knew Central Park like the back of my hand because I'd spent so much time there, really. There was no area that I really didn't know well, and I could lose them easily. I kept this is going on in my head. That was the dialogue I had anyway. They set me down on a bench and began to go through my pockets. I kept talking, however, until one guy took out a gun and put it up to my head and told me to be quiet, and at that point I stopped talking. I really didn't have any money in those days, so there was no money for them to really steal. They got my dad's gold cufflinks and his gold watch that were in my pocket, but they only got about $10 and a few cents I had in my wallet and my subway tokens. After they took everything, they told me to stand up and start walking into the park. I wanted to run, but I knew they had this gun pointed at me, and something told me to just walk slowly. Soon after I started walking, though, they scattered. I found my way out of the park and walked back across to Lincoln Center, where I saw 3 policemen standing on the steps. I went up to them to report what had happened to me. Now, by this time, my eyes were already tearing up, and I don't know if it was just the fear releasing or I was so excited to see the policemen, but by the time I reached them, I was pretty much crying. I told them what had happened, and they looked at me as if to say, well, what do you want us to do about it? They didn't ask me if I wanted to make a report or anything, and pretty much told me to just go home. I explained to them that I was staying way up in Harlem, about 135th Street, and the subway in those days was about $1, maybe $1.10 or something, and I didn't have any money. I didn't even have $1. And I asked them if they would give me $1 to take the subway home, and each of them replied, I have no money. I began to walk. It was after about 1 a.m. or about that time, I think. And to walk to where I was staying was about an hour and a half walk, maybe 2 hours. And as I walked, I decided to kind of do a meditation walking. And I was contemplating on the inner peace that I had. I was so grateful for this sense of calm that somehow came out of me during that whole incident. And in a sense, it protected me from being swallowed up by my own fears. I was grateful to be alive, of course, and I actually, as my walking went on, I actually had some compassion for those young guys who, for whatever reason, decided this is what they had to do in their lives that time. I remember praying that they would find a different path, and that somehow encountering me and my jabbering and chatting and all that maybe would give them some light and that their lives wouldn't just be a compilation of crime. I don't think I told any of my family or friends about that experience until many years later. I guess I didn't really want them to worry. But I remember it because I remember the feeling when fear dissipated. And that's kind of what I'm really talking about today, that the peace, it doesn't eliminate fear, but it dissolves it. There's work there. It's not that just somehow everything's peaceful and happy, but there's work. And in the work, the barriers, the wall of fear gets dismantled, transformed. And that's, in a way, what happened for me in that story. I witnessed it in myself, in a sense. I found that peace place. One of my heroes, Ralph Waldo Emerson, once wrote, "Don't waste yourself in rejection, nor bark against the bad, but chant the beauty of the good." And I'd say that goes for ourselves as well. There's so much good in us. Divine potential waiting to be reawakened and to be loved into expression. The soul is. It has no beginning and it has no end, but flows toward wholeness continually, perpetually. You and I are related to every form of life on this planet and beyond. As our souls evolve, may we move into greater awareness of this nature, this relationship, and the responsibilities to love. Love is an action, as peace is an action. From my experience, learning to love oneself hasn't any real meaning unless it's tied to learning to love others similarly. I mean, we're actually taught that all the time. Love your neighbor as yourself. But living in that place of grace and peace isn't easy. And it's a constant reminding journey of self-discovery. You might ask, how can we stay in this aura of peace? We tend to think if only we could undo what has been done or do what needs to be done, we could live more completely, more perfectly, love more fully. But we are rare. We are not perfect. This is a deep paradox at work in us. For though we aspire to self-mastery and peace, we perceive ourselves only momentarily whole as conscious beings in these bodies. We are worn down by the day-to-day life until we have a moment flash of openness and connectedness to everything. These are moments of enlightenment when the clarity and compassion of centuries rise up in us. We are suddenly more than we are, like having our own day of Christmas. Only then to get cut off on the highway or trip on a crack on the sidewalk or say something hurtful to someone the very next moment. We often tell ourselves that these quote-unquote failures or insecurities, as we label them, are evidence that we aren't trying hard enough, that we are inadequate and incapable. And sadly, we reinforce those illusions by saying that to ourselves and to each other. And worse yet, believing it. We can become discouraged and feel there's something deeply flawed in us because there seems to be something essential we're not getting. We can't learn it. No. I really don't like using that word, no, but perhaps this is only the earthiness of our human condition. It is not the totality of our being. It is not to be corrected or eliminated or even transcended. In this moment, let it just be accepted, embraced with love. Because the action of loving, the process of loving, transforms the moment. You are loving, you are good, you are essential. You are potentiality itself. And we are in moments pure and ageless as light. And yet in the very next breath, we drop things or bruise the treasures of a lifetime. We need to soothe ourselves, not blame ourselves. We need to love ourselves, not loathe ourselves. We are rare, not perfect. And we are destined to know the clarity and the compassion of our humanness. We must remember, as Eric Butterworth wrote, things may happen around you, and things may happen to you, but the only things that matter are the things that happen in you. And I often add to that, what matters is what happens as you. Allow this Advent season to guide you in synchronizing your consciousness with the inspiration of the divine found in every juncture of your day, every moment, every person, every situation, even if only briefly for a moment. Live that fully. For that moment of light, it has a power to change your entire life experience. Practice keeping your thoughts and energy on the spirit of peace, clearing your mind and heart of judgment and worry, creating a realm wherein peace reigns forever. Allow the reawakening of this truth in you, in all of us, to set us free. And so it is. Amen.